everyone, and welcome to The X, a podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything, from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal. Well, this is the end of season 4. I can't believe it. It's been a crazy long year, a lot of exciting news, but we thought it'd be really, really fun today to jump in and talk a little bit about the things that we thought were awesome in 2021, whether it be products, services, companies, doesn't really matter. But Demetrius and I both picked 3 things each, and neither one of us have shared them with one another. So we thought that would be a fun show to wrap up the year and wrap up season 4. Good morning, D. How's it going?
Hey, it's going pretty good. I actually had to think a little bit in order to isolate some items that I haven't already talked about, even last year. So I think it'll be a interesting conversation.
Yeah, we did this last year actually, and I thought it was really fun, and we actually got some good feedback from mostly friends and stuff that said it was kind of interesting to see how you and I think a little differently, and certain things impacted us in different ways. Mine, I don't think you would ever guess, but they did impact me in 2021. So why don't you kick off, D? What was the first thing, whether it be product, service, business, whatever, that really amazed you or impacted you this year?
One of the things I think really stood out for me was actually Marvel and Disney's kind of content that came out this year.
Uh huh.
They started off the year with WandaVision, which I thought was amazing, and it really was a really compelling and like unexpected kind of meditation on grief and how it affects us, which is great timing with everything going on in the world. And a lot of people have lost people from the pandemic. But then it kept going. Like all the Marvel shows, the movies have been great. I feel like, some people have been critical of them, and, you're not going to put out something perfect every time. But I feel like they're reliably great quality, and I'm still enjoying, what's the show that's going on right now, Hawkeye, which I thought was like, we'll see what Hawkeye's like. And then it turned out to be like, very Lethal Weapon or Long Kiss Goodnight. Like it reminds me of like those old Shane Black action comedies, those buddy comedy
Yep.
kind of things. And then we've got the Book of Boba Fett coming out later this year. It's just been reliable, good entertainment throughout the entire year.
Yeah, I feel like they nailed it for both pandemic and post-pandemic life. I think we had everybody in lockdown, and all we pretty much did, and even kind of now, right, is we watch content, right? We're absorbing
Mm-hmm.
something, and pretty much everything they've done has been amazing. Book of Boba Fett, I cannot wait. I think they weave it right into the whole Mandalorian storyline. It looks awesome. I can't wait. We're all very excited here to watch that.
Yeah. And I think starting with Hawkeye, I mean, starting with WandaVision and now with Hawkeye, and I imagine with Book of Boba Fett, going back for some shows, I wouldn't maybe do this with all shows, but going back for some shows and doing the weekly release schedule, it's really awesome to have that week to kind of think about and process and speculate about what's going to happen next. And just having that gap between them is pretty awesome. And, I still love having some shows come out like everything at once, like Squid
Uh-huh.
Game was awesome, being able to just binge that and go. But having that time period has been fantastic.
Don't you think it's kind of strange how we ran away from this whole like weekly drop to this, oh, the whole season's dropped and everyone's super stoked, and then now all these different media companies are like, no, let's go back to doing it just weekly and make people wait for it. I think what they probably realized was that number one is, if the show's great, we are going to wait for it. Well, we have to, right? But more
Mm-hmm.
importantly, there's so much story and discussion online in between those weeks. It's almost like the water cooler days are now completely online. So you have a lot of opportunity to, think about things, see what other people thought about episodes, and before you know it, you're back to whatever it is, Sunday night at 9 o'clock again, right? But I just think it's funny that we keep going full circle. I'm waiting for them to start releasing VHS tapes for all these things. Did you hear about
I
that though?
don't think
Did
we're
you?
going to see that. Are somebody's actually released VHS tapes?
Well, there's rumors, and I don't know if it's true yet because I haven't dug in, because I literally just heard it this morning. But that the new Ghostbusters, they're going to release it on VHS, and so you can actually buy a kind of memorabilia, right? VHS version of the new movie.
That just sounds like, it's gonna sit on your shelf and stuff. I haven't seen a VCR in person for like a decade.
I know. I'd have to buy a VCR basically to watch it. But if you look at vinyl, right? I mean, vinyl, I think I heard the other day has gone up like 700%. The number of people buying vinyl has gone up by like 700% in the last 18 months. And I don't know if that's just because people were home and they want to try something new, or if people are
Hmm.
just kind of nostalgic to have something physical associated with a show or music that they love.
Yeah, but vinyl is like a different animal, right? Like the analog of VHS to audio is actually like cassette tapes. Remember the cassette tapes with the magnetic tape
Oh yeah.
inside
Oh
that
yeah.
would, like, get tangled up and you have to use your pencil in order to get it all back in again.
Yeah.
That's the analog, right? So that's or the analogy, I guess. Or the like vinyl is like something a little bit different compared to VHS. People don't remember, there's a certain nostalgia for it, but people don't remember how bad VHS was. Like, remember having to adjust the tracking and then
Ugh.
rewind and all, like after you watch something, and it would wear out over time. And yeah, it was not good. Now laser discs, I guess, could be something that comes back.
Those were cool. I
Yeah, I
actually
mean,
thought the other day about buying the original Star Wars episode 3, 4, and 5 on
mhm.
Laserdisc only because the first time I saw them, not all three of them, but the very first Star Wars, I saw it on Laserdisc because my uncle had a Laserdisc player back in the 80s. And we went to his house and I was like, what's this? And he's like, sit down, watch, guys. And he like put in Star Wars and it was like the uncut, unmodified original version. And I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool just to have that. But then I don't have a Laserdisc player, so I'd have to go find one of those too.
Yeah, I think they're tremendously expensive. Like buying Star Wars, especially if it's an original press, like a laser disc, it's got to be like astronomically expensive.
Maybe I don't know, unless I just get one that's not in good condition, meaning like the cover art. I mean, the outside sleeve. You know what I
The
mean?
box, yeah.
Yeah, a box that goes with it. Hey, I didn't tell you actually. I'm sitting here right now drinking eggnog with a little bit of cinnamon on top, just to kind of, you know, get me in the spirit for this last episode.
Hey, you should try some nutmeg on that too.
Yeah, yeah. I actually was mixing a little bit of Southern Comfort in it the other night. Yeah, just to spice it up, and it was good. I like it. Most
Yeah,
people
the other night, huh?
yeah, the other night, meaning last night. No,
Not this
this,
morning.
this morning. Yeah. The funny thing is most of the people that I talk to, I know this is off topic, but don't like eggnog. I feel like I'm the only one. Do you like eggnog?
No, we like eggnog. Like, I like eggnog. Christine likes eggnog. I think it's good. One thing I'll say is that you kind of have to dress it up. You need something to go with it. You need like some cookies or something to kind of go with the
Yeah,
eggnog
it's like a whole
most of the time.
experience, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. So, anyway, sorry, back to what you were saying. So, yeah, the Marvel shows, I feel like they keep hitting home runs. It almost feels like they didn't stop any production at all, even during the pandemic.
Well, we know that they did, but at the same time, I think they delayed a lot of releases, and we've had a lot of Marvel releases. We've had a lot of Disney releases, or Star Wars releases this year. So it's been Disney Plus. Not that I'm not getting paid by them or anything, but I feel like it's been a great purchase for anybody who has it.
Yeah, and also if you look at their numbers, I mean, you and I talked about how we thought they would kind of probably overtake Netflix at some point. Those numbers are really high. They
Yeah.
keep going up and up and up, and I feel like they're going to be, competitors with each other. At the end of the day, content rules. Content is king, right? And so
Mhm.
I think if they keep putting out these amazing Marvel shows and all the other ones that they're producing now, like their originals and stuff like that, I think they're going to do really well.
Yeah, they're gonna continue to kill it, and you look at their release schedule, and I think there's like another four movies and four Marvel movies and Marvel shows coming out in 2022,
Yep.
and more stuff planned. And there's so many like things that they're hinting at. I think it's going to be pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's go to my first one. This is my more vanilla one, but there's a reason for it. Is I'm going to say the podcast player. So I use Spotify and Apple. I use both of them. I really feel like we had, in some ways, 2021 was almost this just as stressful, if not more stressful than 2020. And the reason is because our son went back to school, so there's all that. There's a lot of You and I had a lot of amazing projects, but a lot of very demanding big projects.
Hmm.
Plus, we're trying to grow the podcast and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that really has helped is that I feel like a lot of podcasts are better produced than they were, 3 or 4 years ago when things were really starting to heat up in the space. And I will put on a podcast and I will go for a walk or a jog or, a bike ride, and it'll take me away from all the kind of like to dos and the stress and everything for an hour or an hour and a half every day
Hmm.
and totally wind me down and kind of help me reset. And because of that, I started exploring new podcasts that were out there and some that I thought were fun and interesting and not just so serious as well, because I thought, it'd be nice to have some comedy and stuff like that. And one of the ones that I did find was this one called Victory, the podcast, which is the original writers of Entourage, the show on HBO, and the original characters come in and they just talk about all the episodes and how they produced it and how it's different from 2004 than it is, now, and would there ever be a reboot? And they're just hilarious and they drink on the show and it's just really funny and it's just kind of entertainment. It kind of just takes you away.
Hmm.
And so I'm just in love with podcasts. I know we produce one and put it out there, and I love doing this one, but I spend the majority of my time listening to podcasts, not listening to music anymore.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I've kind of been the opposite, where I've whittled down my podcasts. I probably listen by volume, about the same amount, but I'm listening to different things. And one of the things that I found is that listening to news podcasts right now has just been stressful.
It's
So
super
I've been like,
stressful.
I'm not going to listen to that. I'm going to listen to sports or some other stuff and try to get away from that. Just get a little bit of escapism, so I'm not constantly thinking about terrible things happening in the world. One that really stood out for me is actually Mike Tyson's podcast, which surprised me. Somebody recommended it to me, so I checked it out. If you listen to like Bill Burr's podcast,
Okay, so wait, pause for a second here about the Mike Tyson one. So
yeah,
somebody yesterday told me this is what their exact quote was. I have not seen it yet, and I think you probably have. They said you have to see the Mike Tyson podcast where he interviews Bill Burr and
yes,
makes Bill Burr super uncomfortable and asks him like, I guess really like personal and private stuff, like off the cuff, almost as if like Bill Burr didn't know that they were going to get that deep into stuff. Did you
yeah.
see that?
Oh yeah. Well, I didn't see it. I
Or I
I
mean,
listened
hear
to
it.
it.
Yeah.
So that was what I was going to talk about. Like I met the not the Bill Burr podcast, which is a good podcast also, but the Bill Burr's episode of the Mike Tyson's podcast.
Uh-huh.
It's a couple things that always happen. A lot of times he does it in person, so that just kind of ratchets up the tension. And then because Mike Tyson is such like an iconic figure through so much of our lives, almost everybody ends up interviewing Mike Tyson instead of being interviewed by him, including like Eminem and some other like huge names. They're just so like, oh my god, I'm in front of Mike Tyson. I don't want to ask him questions.
Yeah.
The other thing is, Mike Tyson is such a like kind of unknown factor. Like people feel he's could be a bit unstable and so he's interviewing Bill Burr, and you can tell Bill Burr's a little scared because you never know what's going to
Like
happen with Mike
intimidated
Tyson.
or like scared, like meaning like he just was Mike Tyson getting amped up?
Yes,
Oh,
both.
oh, okay.
So he's like a little intimidated. He's like, I don't want to say the wrong thing and set Mike off. And then Mike Tyson mentions like, oh yeah, I just like did a bunch of mushrooms before we started this. It's like I'm just picturing Bill Burr go as white as humanly possible because he's just like, oh
Wow.
my god, I'm gonna die. But it's a great conversation. It's one of the interesting dynamics is just like people like Mike Tyson is good on the podcast, right? He's like it's weird to hear how kind of philosophical he can be,
Oh yeah.
but a lot of times he's high and he's talking to people who are like, if Mike Tyson wanted to kill them, they would just be like, all right, well, I guess this is it. And definitely Bill Burr is like a prime example of that. Like I think another one, Jeremy Piven was a guest host
Yes.
on a couple of them, like guest co-host, and he definitely feels like okay, I'm trying not to get murdered here.
Well, it
So
was funny because Jeremy Piven was on another podcast and talked about it, and he said it was definitely one of those uncomfortable moments because he said the same thing. He said he had taken a whole bunch of mushrooms, and he said so
hmm
you don't really know what he's thinking. And he's very friendly to everybody. It's just
hmm
he's known as like this killer boxer, right? So like everyone always says like that distance between you, you're like, wow, he can like destroy me in like 1 second, right? So I feel I understand why people feel that way. I always imagine that if I met him, I wouldn't be nervous because he's not really doing that anymore, and he seems pretty happy when I
Well,
see him on interviews.
you should see some of his training videos for the. He's got a new. One of his things recently is doing these charity kind of exhibition fights.
Yeah.
So he's signed up to fight Logan Paul next,
Ooh.
the YouTuber.
Ooh. Okay.
And they showed. I've seen a couple of Logan Paul fights. He's not very impressive, which is surprising. He usually fights people smaller than him, like Floyd Mayweather, but he's still a defensive boxer. And
Uh huh.
being going into a Floyd Mayweather fight as the bigger guy and then fighting defensively is not going to work out for you. But he's fighting Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's in his I think he's like 55 or something now, and they released some training video of Mike Tyson at 55, and I'm just like, oh my god, like Logan Paul's going to die.
Well, I don't think that that technique that he has goes away. I mean, you may get out of shape and you may be
Yeah.
slower, but like that precise technique that he's always had, like those rope videos that you had shown me from a long time ago when he was in his 20s, remember? And you'd go up and down the left side, left and right of the rope and stuff, and do those boxing techniques. He was so fast that it seemed
He
like a
looks the
robot was
same,
doing
dude.
it.
He looks the same. Like you watch him at 55 and he looks the same. And I remember when he was fighting Roy Jones, he came out of, was fighting like I think like 48-year-old Roy Jones, 55-year-old Mike Tyson versus 48-year-old Roy Jones. And I was thinking to myself, I don't know that Roy Jones in his prime could beat Mike Tyson at 55. It's just a really, really bad style matchup. And Mike Tyson is still so fast and he has so much technique. He's not that big a guy. He's 5'11", like 210 pounds. Like he's not that big, but his
Yeah.
technique and his leverage, and he's such a savant when it comes to boxing. You hear him talking to someone like Evander Holyfield and they're talking about things and you're just like, I feel like this is a completely different human being than when he's talking about any other topic.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's interesting. I'll have to check that one out. Sounds like you recommend everybody check out that episode, huh?
Oh, that episode, yeah, that episode is like, okay, this is we're seeing like a moment of human drama playing out in front of us. There's just somebody who like Bill Burr sounds like someone who's like trying to negotiate with like a hungry like Siberian tiger.
That's funny, and they're all friends too, which is what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
even though like I hear about this, they all hang out together and like they go to shows together, and I guess Mike Tyson shows up at some of their comedy shows and stuff like that. So it's like they're all in the same circle. It's just everyone still has that like visceral response to him,
Hmm.
even over this time. That's great. That's awesome. Yes, that's a good recommendation. Let me look at mine actually right here and see if I have any other recommendations for our guests. So as I'm looking, like I was doing Victory, definitely if you love tech news, Kara Swisher's Sway is really good. She does these deep dive interviews with all kinds of people, from politicians to everything. And if you want to kind of get a deep look into something. And then the other one that I do, which is if you really want to have a good laugh and just get away from everything, just listen to Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. So it's
Oh.
him and his assistant, Sona Mosesian. Obsession. I don't remember exactly how her last name is, but it's him and Sona, and then I think the producer. Oh, they're hilarious. They bring guests on. They sometimes let people, like you and me, whatever, call in and ask him questions, and then he'll
Mhm.
try to give you life advice and stuff. Hilarious. Like highly recommend Conan's podcast. What do you got, D, for your number two?
So my number two kind of goes along, I guess, with the audio that you're talking about. So you mentioned getting more and more into podcasts. I have probably listened to about the same, but 2021 was kind of the year where I got much more back into music. And I've always been into music. I play a few instruments, and I've like being in the Bay Area. You have the opportunity to go a lot of live shows. You can go and see a lot of bands for like 10-15 bucks for the price of going to the movies. You can go to a concert. So this year I discovered the Sennheiser HD58X headphones. So these
Mm.
are basically audiophile or studio quality headphones. They're open back, and if you've never heard of open back headphones, they're a very different experience than closed back headphones. And one of the reasons why it stood out for me is when we were back at NASA, and I was in my lab, which was focusing on haptics and virtual environments. You were over in the audio lab, and they had HT600s from Sennheiser, which is now considered like a legendary headphone, like very influential.
Hmm.
Um, and it's still, this was 15, 16 years ago, and it's still, that headphone is still a huge seller. I used to borrow had those HT600s and listen to them and use them to just listen to music, and it was amazing. And I've always been looking for that experience again. And then I found these on drop, and they were, I think I got them for like $130. They're on sale. I think the normal price is like 180, so a lot cheaper than like the $400 price for the 600s. And it's a very, very similar sound, and it's been great kind of getting back into music and hearing listening to them through headphones like this, and really kind of getting a little bit more detail and feeling a little bit more natural, like not like you're listening to headphones, like what we think of as like a headphone listening experience. It's something that's more engrossing. It feels like there's a sense of space going on, like you're actually at a live show or something. And it's going back and finding like old recordings or new recordings and listening to them, and it feeling like a different song now has been a lot of fun throughout the year.
Yeah, doesn't it kind of feel like the cost of super high end headphones? It just keeps going down and down and down.
You can get amazing stuff. Uh, you can get in-ear in-ear monitors, are basically headphones, for like $20 that will completely blow away like an AirPods or pretty much any true wireless at this point. But you can get amazing stuff for 20, 30, $40 that is light years ahead of what you might get from from a big brand true wireless headbud
Yeah,
earbud.
that's pretty crazy. And I feel like the cost of these things to me seems like they kind of went off a cliff about 4 years ago. I don't know what happened, but it was like we were at CES a while back and we were still looking at things that were $600 or $800. And now it seems like when people are talking about high end headphones or monitors and things like that. Now people are talking more about like the $300 range, right? It's almost like it went off a cliff. Like suddenly the cost to produce went down, or maybe the
Mm-hmm.
profit margin shrunk. But for whatever reason, that's kind of where we're at, which is great because that just means that anyone can have high quality headphones for a reasonable price. And like you said, if you can pick something up for less than $50 and have the quality that you top quality that you would have had 10 years ago, right? It's like,
Yeah,
wow, like things are really shifting. And that's something that we're seeing all across the board with hardware, right? Is like everything's
yeah.
getting less expensive, you know?
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. Is one of the things that has changed over the past 20 years or so has been headphones that used to cost, or sources or DACs or whatever, or amplifiers even, that used to be six, seven, $800, $1,000, are now coming in at like $150, $200, $300, and it's the same quality, but I think they've gotten so much better at manufacturing them
Hmm.
that the price is drumming down, down and down and down. Now you could still go out there and spend $5,000 on a set of headphones and another $10,000 on an amp, but you can get almost the exact same experience, a very similar experience, for much, much less. So the kind of the cost of entry is much lower. It's much more accessible. So there's a lot of great deals to be had out there.
Yeah, one of the things that we picked up in 2021, which has been amazing, which is this is not one of my ones. I was just going to mention this, which is the JBL Flip 5. It's one of those
Mm,
waterproof portable outdoor speakers, the ones that you can just zip up. They're really small, like the size of a water bottle, and you can
mm-hmm.
take them with you. And we just decided to start taking it everywhere. So when we go to the beach, when we go to a friend's house, when we go to my parents' house, like it doesn't matter. Like we bring it over and we just pop on music. And it really is, gosh, it's been nice.
Yeah,
I guess I never thought about it before. Like I would play music out of my phone or something. But it's like for less than $100, it's like you can have this really amazing outdoor speaker with some great sound quality, and you could turn any moment or event into something really fun. And so that's just as a side note, it's pretty awesome. Now, I just want to be clear with everybody: we're not being paid by any of these companies, Demetrius sites, to
Yeah.
pick these things out. Because they made us happy or made us feel good in 2021. So, all right. So my second one is a company called Virus Geeks. Um, I believe Virus Geeks is a Bay Area only company, but here's what happened. So my son had to go back to school, after the pandemic, first wave of the pandemic died down. And one of the mitigation measures that they have to keep all the kids safe in school, we're in California, is offering testing services to anyone who wants it. So what they did is this company called Virus Geeks. You register with them, you put all your information in, and then they're set up outside in the parking lots of hotels in our area. So we're in San Mateo, California. So there's a bunch of locations in San Mateo where we could drive through with our car anytime from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at night. It's really great schedule. Um, they You drive up to them, they hand you a little bag, you swab it in your nose, you drop it into the container, they give you a little card with a code on it, and then within 24 to 48 hours, you get a result on whether or not you're positive or negative for COVID. This has been a lifesaver, and I know that you can do this over at CVS and some of the other drugstores, but the seamlessness of Virus Geeks, I mean, the ability that it's 5 minutes from my house, I can literally leave, drive over there, get swabbed, no questions asked, nothing. It's paid for by the county. We do it all the time. And part of the reason why we do it all the time is because we're kind of required to by the school and stuff. So like the kids get tested once a week and that kind of stuff. And then also if there happens to be a positive in the school, then usually they tell parents it's probably a good idea if you get tested, if your child was close to this person or whatever. So there's just like these mitigation measures to stopping spread. But in addition to that, before every holiday, our family and anyone who's over here who does want to get together drives over there, goes through the little thing, gets swabbed, hangs out mostly at home, for those 2 days, and then we just go meet up and have a wonderful holiday, and that's it. Everyone's tested. I mean, everyone's vaccinated anyways, but like getting the ease of the testing, it has become like this thing that we do for every holiday, and it is phenomenal because it gives you that peace of mind that everything's okay and that you can enjoy yourself and not really worry about an outbreak because you've had the third level of mitigation, which is like the first is like just being safe and wearing masks and that kind of stuff. The second is that everyone's vaccinated and boosted. And the third is everyone gets tested right before we meet just to make sure that nobody happened to pick anything up. And so I got to give it to Virus Geeks. They're killing it. I think they're almost at like 24-hour turnaround now. So if you go over there like at noon, by noon the next day, you get your result and boom, you're meeting up with family. So love them. They've been amazing. I really hope this becomes a regular thing. And one last thing I'll say about it is that when I see this and I see how easy it is for people to get tested, because I think they also do like influenza or they will in the future, the idea that if you're going to have a gathering or a work party or anything, like these companies, you could just ask them to come to your location, test everybody before they go in, make sure everyone's safe so that we can kind of move safely through this unfortunate pandemic endemic time. So that's my number two.
That's cool. Yeah. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, something like that isn't going to be necessary in the near future.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I've seen these new companies coming up with actual machines that you can purchase and have in your house very cheaply. They're very small. They're like the size of an old typewriter. Not typewriter, sorry, like half the size of a typewriter. They're pretty small, and basically they have these little strips. And basically, you like lick the strip or whatever, and then you stick it in. It tells you whether or not you have COVID or influenza or anything like that. And you could do that before leaving your house to go to a party, just to give people peace of mind. But I think they're going to be around for a little while. I think, to be honest, I think it's going to be another 12 to 18 months before we start seeing those measures start to dissipate.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. We were hoping to have that kind of figured out now, but the vaccine hesitancy, I think, has really kind of caused us to stretch out.
Yeah, it just keeps stretching out. So, what about you? What's your third one on the list?
My third one is a Lenovo Legion 5 Pro, and that
Ooh,
is a gaming laptop with I think RTX 3070 graphics card in it. And my old laptop was, I think, around like 6 years old or so, and it's still actually going pretty well, but the keyboard's starting to kind of fail. And I thought about, I could crack it open and swap out the keyboard, but it's 6 years old. I might as well kind of move on and get something new. And so I went with the gaming laptop, which is a very different kind of size and form factor than an ultrabook that I had previously. And I've much preferred it. Like I've come to realize, like, yeah, I feel like ultrabooks were like completely unnecessary. Like this laptop, even though it's bigger, it's thicker, it doesn't matter at all. It doesn't change anything. So I love this laptop. I love the keyboard. I love the responsiveness. The screen is much brighter. But one of the biggest things I noticed for myself was just like I never needed an ultrabook. There was no reason why I needed a laptop to be that thin and light.
Well,
It's just
can you for those who don't regularly like study laptops like you do, can you tell the difference between an ultrabook and a regular portable PC or laptop?
so an ultrabook is going to be primarily it's going to be thinner and lighter than a more of a full size laptop. So it's something that's prioritized for being out and about, throwing it in a bag, and it's going to be lighter and things like that. But it's not really that much lighter. It's like ounces lighter. It's not like pounds lighter per se.
I see.
And it's not like I went from a 15-inch screen to a 16-inch screen, and I feel like the size, um, other than thickness, is almost exactly the same. And the thickness now it is maybe it's a few millimeters thickness. Like it's not a huge change.
Uh-huh.
And what I gave up for the ultrabook was okay. Now I don't have a discrete graphics card. I just have Intel Iris integrated graphics, and it really limited what I could do with that laptop. And now that I have this one, I feel like it's kind of opened things up, so I can it enables more use cases, right? So it's one of those situations where I realized, like, okay, I went for the spec bump in exchange for uh, a use case, and I've really preferred going back. I've preferred going back to a slightly larger laptop that can do more things.
Well, is that partly because you're not traveling anymore though? Like, I mean, you would come to the office at least a couple days a week, plus we'd go see clients and stuff like that, or you just don't care at
No,
this
it's
point.
it's not noticeable. Like I've packed it up and take it to my mom's house. I take it to some other places. I don't notice it. Like
Oh,
it's no, I pick it up and I move it around from room to room in the house. And the thing is, well, this laptop comes with a massive brick of a charging block. So, you know, it's probably a good idea to get something smaller and easier for travel. But between the laptops themselves, there's the difference is actually pretty minimal. Like, I keep talking about like with Apple products, like improving or slimming it down a few millimeters is just not meaningful, right? They keep trying to do that, and there's a lot of trade-offs in order to get there. That's one of the reasons why they had, that problematic keyboard for a few years was they
mhm.
were trying to slim things down more than they already were.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, from an experience standpoint, it doesn't make a difference. I'd rather have something that can provide better cooling and better performance and open up some more use cases. Like uh, I can do more with like graphics programs than I could before, or it's faster, and somebody will look at it and say, "Oh, well, an M1 MacBook will be just as fast as this laptop you're using now." And I'm like, "Well, that's great, but could they do even more if they gave it a little bit more size and let the components breathe a little bit more? Like,
Yeah, that's
why
true.
not?"
Yeah.
Like I don't need it to be paper thin. That doesn't really do anything for me.
Unless you're kind of a more of an edge case on that, meaning like their core customer cares about it. I mean, you almost wonder if like they make it such a big deal about it on uh, every launch that I wonder
Mm-hmm.
if they just have data about their customers and their customers are like, we want thinner, we want lighter, we want, you know what I mean?
I don't know, dude. We've done a lot of research into what people want with consumer electronics. I've never heard somebody say like, "Oh, this would be great if it was 3 millimeters thinner."
Yeah. Well, I don't
I've
think they
never
ever get
heard
that
somebody ask for it.
specific, but like I remember some of like the old Dell laptops and stuff like that. People would say like, these are pretty heavy. They have a ton of stuff in them, but oh, these are
Well,
pretty heavy, right? So it's like I think there is a sweet spot for
Yeah.
for size and weight where no one would ever say a word again.
Well, to be clear, this is still a lot thinner and lighter than those old Dell laptops. So it's like that's not on the extreme end. But you can if somebody were to take an M1 powered MacBook and make it the same size as Legion 5 Pro, if it had if it provided performance improvements because of better cooling and things,
Uh-huh.
I would say it's absolutely worth it. Like
Do you know how much it was? Like what was the cost of that one?
for this laptop,
Yeah.
it was about, I think I got it for around like 2 grand or so.
Okay. Okay. So
Um,
it's a little more expensive than just your average laptop though, right? Because if you just went to go
yeah.
find your average laptop, it'd be around what, 1,000?
Well, let me see, for about 1,300 because
Okay.
Christine's been looking for a new laptop and everything's kind of sitting around there. Uh, and so this was a little bit more, but you get more for it. But just from the form factor perspective, it's just I don't really see a real reason to get a an ultrabook other than like you you just really want thin and light for some reason. Like I don't
Yeah.
think it's gonna affect too much your experience, like going different places and sitting different,
It
like sitting in
definitely
coffee shops
feels
or anything like that.
it definitely feels like the last couple of years it's been less about like heavy like innovation on all of these companies and more about like trimming things down, increasing storage, going lighter, better screens, like going back to the basics of like just give everyone like a really powerful computer with like a really good interface and less about like we're going to add. I remember at one point you would buy a laptop and they'd give you like I think they were like 3D glasses with them so that you could see stuff in 3D. And
Yeah,
I was like, I don't know. I don't know that people really want that stuff.
yeah, I didn't need it. I
Yeah.
think one of the things is that and one of the trends that we've seen over the past few years, especially in PCs, is that there has been innovation for internal components. So we're
Yes.
seeing AMD releasing new processors that have a GPU in it and a CPU combined into an APU. So that has kind of really surpassed Intel, right? And we've seen uh, what else? We've seen new generations of graphic cards. We've seen better cooling systems. We've seen all kinds of
We've also seen a lot of
improvements.
these companies start producing their own chips, right?
Yeah,
So it's like Apple's producing their own chip, GoPro's producing their own chip now. Like it almost seems like everybody is heading in
yeah.
the direction of owning their own internal hardware rather than grabbing components from other companies and stitching them together.
Well, Google's producing their own chips too for their
Yeah.
phones, and one of the things that I've seen talked about was that by designing their chip specifically for their use cases that they have in mind, then they can get more performance for less cost and for less for less power, for less overhead, everything that's in less heat, because they're optimized specifically for those use cases, as opposed to like a general purpose Intel or AMD chip is designed to accommodate all use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's really good input. I mean, I think that's helpful for anyone who's looking for a new laptop right now and doing homework and not just going to buy a MacBook, but wants to try something new or something completely different. All right, let's switch over to my third and final one, which is completely different than a laptop. This is the Catch Surf bodyboards. So there's a company based out of Southern California that makes these absolutely amazing, awesome boogie boards. So in the last, I don't know, maybe like 3 or 4 years, boogie boarding has come back. So boogie boards was a brand. So a lot of people just call them body boards. But this company Catch Surf started making them. They're very soft on the top. They have a nice hard bottom. A lot of the pro surfers use them. They'll take them out onto like really big waves and things like that. It caught my eye because some of the surfers that I watch were playing around with them at the beach and having a good time. And my son was interested in water sports, but not necessarily old enough kind of to get into surfing around here. Like we wanted to wait a little longer. And so I bought one and it is phenomenal. It's durable. It's fun. They have crazy designs and colors on them. They're $100 and which is a little more expensive than a boogie board that you would buy, let's say over like an ABC store in Hawaii or over at your local shop, but they is totally worth it. They're extremely durable, lasts forever. You can get one that matches your size. So you just put down how tall you are, and it tells you which one you need to get. They have really amazing designs. Right now they have like a lot of 80s and 90s designs. It's just kind of like a retro thing. Um, we loved it so much we ended up buying a second one, and it actually got me back into bodyboarding because I was only surfing and swimming, and then doing this, it was so much fun that I was like, oh my gosh, I got to get another one of these. So we ended up buying two of them, and we use them in the summertime mostly at the local beaches. It's a lot of fun. They're durable. You could toss them around. You could throw them back your car. You're not going to worry about it. Highly recommend it. So the company is called Catch Surf, and they are in Southern California.
Let me ask you a question. Do you, when you're boogie boarding in the summer, and I assume in the ocean, are you wearing wetsuits? Are you
Oh
wetsuiting
yeah,
up?
yeah. Because
Yeah.
the temperature's around 54 degrees, and
Hmm.
if you even if on a really hot day, if you went out there, you wouldn't last long in the water before you start to get the shivers. So around here, I mean, you can wear like a half suit. You can wear one that's like
Yeah.
shorts and then just has long arms or whatever to kind of keep you warm. But for the most part, no, I just put on a full wetsuit, and my son puts on a full wetsuit as well, and that allows us to stay out for hours. So we'll go out, play, sit on the beach, go back, play again, do all kinds of stuff, and we never get cold. Now in Southern California, there's plenty of people and plenty of days when people don't wear anything but board shorts and a rash guard,
Hmm.
and they play over there. But in Northern California, no way, too cold.
Well, funny story. Back when we were kids, my brother and I used to boogie board for hours with no wetsuit.
Yeah, so
And like, I think about it now, I'm like, how did I do
So
that?
there is this thing. I mean, I shouldn't say like nobody does that. So there is this thing called cold exposure, where if you swim in the ocean on a regular basis in the cold weather, your body just gets used to it over time. They do it at the Dolphin Club in San Francisco. People swim
Hmm.
from there all the way to Alcatraz and back and all that kind of stuff. The average person, though, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, maybe you felt good about it and it was fine when you were younger, but like the average person could get hypothermia super fast.
No, we definitely thought that, okay, this is freezing cold, but I think we tolerated it partially because we just didn't have wetsuits.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and my brother used to surf, and he would surf without a wetsuit because he just, couldn't afford one at the time.
Yeah,
So,
and also back then, so different than now. Like wetsuits
yeah.
are way less expensive now. They're super common. There's surf shops all over that sell them so you can try them on. You can buy them
Hmm.
for less than the cost of the boogie board to get a wetsuit. Where back in the old days, it's like you would have to go to like O'Neill Surf Shop in Santa Cruz, get fitted and all that kind of stuff. It's just different now. That
Yeah.
stuff's cheaper.
Yeah. I think for us back then, it was just like, oh, hey, we're not doing this all the time.
Nope.
So we're borrowing this boogie board and going out on the waves. So it's just kind of the thing we would do for a few summers.
Well,
But,
we
and
didn't
I don't think my parents felt like, all right, well, we're doing this enough to invest in a wetsuit you're going to grow out of in a year or two.
Well, here's the funny thing, right? Is that like I realize that like at least around here, geography definitely matters when it comes to how often you go to the beach. So living in San
Hmm.
Mateo in this side of the peninsula, it only takes us 23 minutes to get to Half Moon Bay, and it takes about the same to get to Pacifica. 23 minutes is nothing, right? But when I
Yeah.
grew up on the East Bay, I mean, you're talking more like an hour and something. When you
Mm.
get to that point where it's taking you more than an hour to get somewhere, you're just not going all the time. I have probably been to the beach 100 times in the last 2 years. Like we go all the time. Like literally, like it'll be like a Wednesday night, and we're like, "Hey, you want to drive to the beach and eat sandwiches on the beach?" I'm like, "Okay," right? Because it's just so much closer. And so, like having wetsuits in my car all the time. Sometimes we'll just be like, "Hey, you just want to hop in for like 30 minutes and then just go home?" Okay, cool.
Yeah. So anybody who's not in California or Hawaii or something who's listening to this, yeah, this is part of the California lifestyle. Is like, all right, well, there's a beach right there. We should go take advantage of it.
Absolutely, yeah. Like we went there during the pandemic. Obviously no one was driving around or anything, and it was very quiet. Right in the very beginning of it, and we went over to Half Moon Bay. I remember one night it was warm and clear skies, full moon, and we brought hot chocolate and food, and we just sat on the beach. There's no one around anywhere. We sat on the beach in the pitch dark and just listened to the waves and the moon, and you could see in the distance all the crab boats way out in the water with their big bright lights on, pulling crabs out of the water. It was pretty amazing.
Mm, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was a good experience. But all right, D. Well, that was pretty good. I thought that was fun. We both picked out three of our kind of memorable either companies, products, or services from 2021, and kind of looking forward at 2022. I know you and I talked about this, but we want to kind of let our guests know, and the people who listen to us on a regular basis, our listeners, we changed our format at the end of this year on purpose because we heard that doing more weekly content, stuff that's a little more in the moment, was stuff that people were interested in. They liked the longer form stuff that we would do, like the deep dives, but kind of wanted us to kind of weave those in. Since we started doing that, we've actually increased our numbers on downloads and stuff, and it seems like people really like that. So we are going to stick with the weekly news type format, but we're going to shake it up a little bit. We're going to have some guests come in next year. A few of our previous guests are going to come back. They have some stuff to share and talk about. It's going to be super fun. And then we'll do some deep dives every once in a while as well, because Demetrius and I still like to do those as researchers. It's fun to like tell longer stories and kind of predict what we think is going to happen in certain segments. So we're going to keep that up because people seem to like it. If you don't like it, just send us a message on Twitter, and let us know, and we'll think through that. But we wanted to thank everybody so much for taking the time to listen to us today. We really appreciate it. Demetrius and I do this because we like doing it, not because we have to. We don't get paid to do this. We just love sharing our thoughts and information as people who have spent our whole lives either living or working in Silicon Valley and focusing on customer experience and product experience. We won't be posting any links on this episode because there's nothing to post, unless Demetrius wants to put some links to the products that we talked about, but we pretty much outlined those for you. So I think that is a done deal on that. But if you like this podcast, found it interesting or informative, it helps us a great deal if you subscribe or leave a review on whatever platform you use. It's been amazing. People have been leaving some feedback and also sending us feedback, and we really, really love it. So we hope everyone has an amazing holiday season, and we're going to take a little break, and then we will see you early next year.